Hello, my smart little stars. Welcome to Learning with Auntie Anu Alwyn, where stories come alive, lessons become adventures, and every video helps you grow smarter, kinder, and braver. Our story begins with bravery. In a little house on a quiet street, there lived a sweet and gentle girl named Nancy. She had big brown eyes and curly brown hair, and she loved to play outside with her friends during the day. But when the sun began to set and the stars started to twinkle in the sky, Nancy would start to feel a little scared. She was afraid of the dark, and she didn't like to be alone at night. Nancy's room was a cozy little space with a big window that let in lots of sunlight during the day. But at night the shadows would creep in and make everything looked spooky. Nancy would try to hide under her blankets, but she could still hear the creaks and groans of the old house, and she would imagine all sorts of scary things. She was afraid that monsters might be lurking in the closet, or that ghosts might be floating outside her window. She would lie awake for hours, her heart pounding in her chest, and she wouldn't be able to fall asleep until her mom or dad came in to comfort her. One night, Nancy's mom had an idea. She said, "Nancy, I want you to be brave tonight. I want you to face your fears and show them who's boss." Nancy wasn't sure if she could do it, but she wanted to try. So her mom gave her a special task. She said, "I want you to go into your room and I want you to turn off the light. Then I want you to stand in the middle of the room and I want you to say out loud, 'I am brave.'" Nancy took a deep breath, and she walked into her room. She closed the door behind her, and she flipped the switch. The room was plunged into darkness, and Nancy felt her heart start to pound. But she remembered what her mom had said, so she stood up straight and she said in a loud, clear voice, "I am brave." First, it didn't feel like it was working. The shadows still looked spooky, and the creaks and groans of the house still sounded scary. But Nancy said it again, louder this time. "I am brave." And then she said it again, even louder. "I am brave." She stood there in the darkness. Something started to happen. Nancy began to feel a little bit braver. She realized that the shadows weren't really spooky. They were just the outlines of her furniture and her toys. And the creaks and groans of the house were just the old wooden beams settling into place. Nancy started to feel more confident, so she decided to take a step further. She walked over to her closet and she opened the door. At first, it was hard to see inside, but as her eyes adjusted to the darkness, she saw that it was just an ordinary closet. There were no monsters lurking in the corners, and there were no ghosts hiding behind her clothes. Nancy felt a surge of pride and accomplishment. She had faced her fears and she had come out on top. She closed the closet door, and she walked back to the middle of the room. She said it again one more time. "I am brave." As she stood there in the darkness, Nancy started to feel a sense of peace wash over her. She realized that she didn't have to be afraid of the dark, because she was in control. She could turn on the light whenever she wanted and she could make the shadows go away. She could be brave and she could be strong. Nancy's mom had been listening outside the door, and she was so proud of her little girl. She came into the room, and she gave Nancy a big hug. "I am so proud of you, Nancy," she said. "You are brave and you are strong. You can face any fear that comes your way." Nancy smiled and she felt happy and proud of herself. She realized that she didn't have to be afraid of the dark, and she didn't have to be afraid of anything else either. She could face her fears and she could overcome them. From that night on, Nancy was no longer afraid of the dark. She would go to bed with a sense of confidence and bravery, knowing that she could handle anything that came her way. And every time she felt scared or uncertain, she would remember what her mom had said. She would stand up straight and she would say it out loud. I am brave. As the days went by, Nancy found that she was becoming braver and braver. She would try new things and she would face new challenges. She would climb to the top of the jungle gym and she would swing high in the air. She would ride her bike down steep hills, and she would play with her friends in the park. Nancy was no longer held back by her fears, and she was free to explore the world around her. She was a big, brave girl, and she could do anything she set her mind to. But even though Nancy was brave, she still had moments of fear and uncertainty. She would still get scared sometimes and she would still feel anxious. But she knew what to do. She would take a deep breath, and she would remember what her mom had said. She would stand up straight and she would say it out loud. I am brave. And as she said the words, she would feel her fears start to fade away. She would feel her confidence and bravery start to grow, and she would know that she could face anything that came her way. Nancy's story spread throughout the land, and soon, children from all over were facing their fears and becoming brave. They would stand up straight and they would say it out loud. I am brave. And as they said the words, they would feel their fears start to fade away. They would feel their confidence and bravery start to grow, and they would know that they could face anything that came their way. And Nancy, the little girl who was once afraid of the dark, was the bravest of them all. She had faced her fears and she had come out on top. She was a shining example of what it means to be brave, and she inspired others to be brave too. Years went by and Nancy grew up to be a strong and confident woman. She never forgot the lessons she had learned as a child, and she always remembered to face her fears and be brave. She traveled the world, and she had many amazing adventures. She climbed mountains and she sailed across oceans. She made new friends and she had a wonderful family. And through it all, she remained brave and strong. She knew that she could face anything that came her way, and she was never afraid to try new things. And even though Nancy's story is over, the lesson she learned will live on. It's a lesson that we can all learn from, and it's a lesson that we can all apply to our own lives. We can face our fears and we can be brave. We can stand up straight and we can say it out loud. I am brave. And as we say the words, we can feel our fears start to fade away. We can feel our confidence and bravery start to grow, and we can know that we can face anything that comes our way. So let's all remember Nancy's story, and let's all try to be a little bit braver every day. We can do it and we will. Be amazed at what we can accomplish. Story time may be ending, but your learning adventure never stops. Thank you for spending time with Auntie Anu Alwyn today. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to become part of our happy learning family. And always remember, smart minds grow with kind hearts. Bye-bye, my little champions.